Hey everybody, good morning. Steve with Clay Mesh Studio. I think that I've got my morning voice still. Just got up, but you know what? You gotta be up early to get these tutorials done. So what I want to do is take you guys through some shading nodes and kind of show you what I did to achieve some pretty cool looks. I think you could probably take this any which direction you wanted to. Just some simple overlays and some mapping and texture coordinates. But if you don't know, then it's a way that you can actually take the geometry and manipulate it with the texture nodes like you would in Substance Painter. So we're doing layers and overlays and transparencies, and so like those monkey heads, they're on the outside completely. This side, you can see them, yet the wall's textured. Okay, so that's pretty neat. And we'll just take you through a little short tutorial on how to kind of get the format, and then we'll duplicate some things and dub them so you can make your own textures. Let's jump right in. Alright, so what we can do is kind of create like this little background setup. And I'm going to be on number pad 1, and I'm using Blender 3.4, using that alpha version. Seems to be pretty good. It's a little crashy if you have a heavy scene. I mean, Blender is overall anyways, but anyhow, just turn on L screencast keys. Now, gosh, that's a little big. I think we could bring the mouse size down a little bit, right? Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to grab this in edit mode, make sure I'm on edge select, and I'll grab these three. I don't know if you could see that or not, but I've got these three outside edges plus the back, and I'll just extrude that up and hit Z. So I've got something to kind of work inside of. Maybe just bring it down a touch. That looks pretty cool, so I'll go to Modifier tab. I'll throw on a bevel, 20 or so segments. Kind of bring down the edge a little bit. Kind of play with this. Hard and normals is fine. Go to miter outer and choose arc. I will shade it smooth. I think that looks pretty good for now. So what I want to do is just immediately jump over to the shading tab. And in order to see this the way I want, I'm going to go to cycles, because that's how I'm going to be working with it. And I've already got a world property here I don't actually want. I keep that one on default. So I'll just remove that and add a basic background. Turn it down to something like 0.3. Alright, just going to add a new material and then find out where that is. Don't need to see too much of this screen. And I like working from the bottom. If you don't want to work from that side, you're more than welcome to pull out a side screen. Collapse this. You can just right click and click join areas. And then if you join this area, it will fill the screen, and then you can drag this over to the left. Alright, so just taking the principal BSDF, what we can do is make sure first that you've got Node Wrangler on. And so I'll go into Preferences, Add-ons, type in Node, and just tick all three of these on and hit the X. Or make sure you hit Save Preferences if it's sitting right there. So I'm going to take the base color and just drop it out. Type in ramp. And now I've got a color ramp. So there's a few things to know about this. We're going to be working with the ease, so you can switch it. And we're going to be working with distribute points from left. And what we could do is go ahead and set this thing up what I'll do is I'll click to add, and we can work with 5 different colors for now. So change these to definite colors that I can see. It could be any colors you wish. And I'll leave one white kind of in the middle and then go with a blue. As you see right now, it's just kind of snapping. There's no control over this, not really, because this is just projecting the base color. So if anything, you're just going to get one solid color, and that's not really good enough. So what we want to do is start building on the back side of this. And there is also the factor adjustment down here. It gives you a little bit more control going through the stops, but still not good enough. Now you're really not wrong for anything you put here, but I'm going to use a gradient for now. And I'll put that on the color. And now I get something like this. And now the color ramp is reaching back to my gradient and then putting this out to the base color. So now you really would have to use the stops. So it's pretty cool. You can move these colors anywhere you want. You could remove or even add some more if you wish. So what I'll do now is, this is a vector, so I'm going to put a mapping node on this. And now with the mapping node, I'm going to need to do something else, right? So for that vector, I'm going to pull this out, and I will put a texture coordinate. And the texture coordinate is going to help us a little bit. I don't want it ungenerated though. I want it on object. And so now what you can do is you can actually start rotating that, and you could actually use this in a scene for emphasis lighting, if you will, and you could create a really nice focal point on your mesh and still have light coming down over here. So if I just drop this light in right here, you can see you can still light this area even though it's pretty dark. So if I wanted to, I could just leave that right there, and then I've got this nice focus over here. So I could take that and turn that into white light and use it that way. Now what we can do is kind of go over the texture coordinate a little bit because it's very important. So number one, the generated, if you plug that in, you get an automatic vertex position of the mesh kind of projection, and this will kind of keep whatever you have in here, it'll keep it sticking to the mesh through animation. So this one's really good for animations. So other words, if you had like distribute points on faces or something like that, then the mesh, the texture coordinate generated will actually keep that sticking to those points as it moves around. So extremely useful. Now when you're using, and that was control right click, you can just slash, and then I'll take the normal. I'm kind of curious actually, if I lazy connect this with alt right click, yeah, it goes straight to generated. So the normal to vector, that's what you would think. It connects the normals, and what it will do is it will actually take the, like a point or a spotlight works well with those for the projection, and it will also help take like the rotation of the light into account. So if I move this, you can see, maybe not the best example, but understand that it works with the normals and that it takes light rotation into account. Now for the UV, it obviously uses a set of UVs to project, and we don't have any UVs, so you're just going to see whatever Blender is putting on it. Now for object, this is the one we're going to be using, and this one will help you put like a little image texture somewhere, possibly animated in an exact position. And it's also really good for taking the texture and moving it around on an object, which is what we're going to be doing. So as we work with this, we'll be able to rotate inside and take into account each color and then kind of manipulate those colors with different nodes and scale and everything else that we're going to be doing. Now the camera will work with the selected camera in the space, and I actually haven't messed with that one, but I'll just throw a camera in, and I don't really see a whole lot going on there. I'll have to kind of investigate that one a little bit. Now the next one is window, and this one's pretty cool. So if you plug window in and then Shift A, I actually found this out just by messing around and then confirmed it in the actual manual. So you take this and let's just shift click, and then I'll hit Control L and link those materials. So now if I take the sphere, this might be better over here so you can see it. I'll hit G and Z, and what it does is it actually blends the two. So if you had another object in the scene and you wanted it to kind of maybe share the texture a little bit, it saves a lot of time. So you literally could just throw something in, link the material, and under window, and that's not a reflection, it's actually sharing the texture since they're linked now. But you can actually move it around so it doesn't, let me see if it's more profound. If I take this and kind of just play with it till I get more than one color. Let's play with that scale right there. Now you should be able to really see the difference. There you go. And it's moving in and out. Not a reflection. Anyways, pretty cool. So going back to the shading tab. Now the reflection does just what you would think. It adds a reflection. It's good for environment maps. So if I was to take this, you know, it will share the actual reflection, which actually has to be modified over here. Kind of works as a reflection. So anyways, I wonder if I shade that smooth, it looks a little better. There we go. So that's pretty cool. Keeps it nice and sharp. And a lot can be done with that as well. Some things like, I don't know, it looks like maybe a sci-fi eyeball or something, right? Could do a lot with it. And if you could play around with the rotations and the scale, and you can move it around, and I don't know, pretty cool. But right now, we're going to be working with object. So let's get that one situated. And what I want to do is zero these back out. And if you don't know how to do that, just left click dragging down. With the mouse still here, you got to leave it there, hit 0 and enter. And then you can do everything you need to do. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of mess around with the different access. There we go. Alright, now it means something. So my scale was just off a little bit. Alright, this can take on any, like, you're just gonna have to play with this thing and figure out what you want to do with it. But it could take on any design you wish. You can make just the edges show the texture, and then you can actually duplicate that and do a bunch of different things, and then kind of fade them in and out. And it may seem a little rudimentary at the moment, but as we go along, I think you'll really start to appreciate what you can do inside the texture nodes. So from here, what I want to do is under shaders, I'll grab an add shader. I'm going to grab a glass BSDF. And I also want a transparent BSDF. I'll just kind of start dumping these in here. We'll organize them in just a moment. And that's pretty good. I'm not going to get into any volume scattering, even though I think that is probably one of the coolest things that Blender does. Yeah, maybe at the end. We might play around with that. And I'll put the volume scatter over here, next to the volume. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Just grab my little gang here and bring them down. And now what I want to do is mix these colors. And so I've got the mapping, texture, gradient, and the color ramp. I'm going to Shift D, kind of bring these down and over a little bit. And I'll tag this color in here. Now everything's a little bit different, or it needs to be a little bit different because everything's the same. So from here, now what you're going to be doing is you can kind of scale these individual areas and rotate them around. And try to bring that back to the edge. There we go. So now I've got virtually the same thing on both sides. I guess I can work on that, but give you an idea of what you can do. And then if you want to change the colors around, you can definitely do that as well. Now I'm going to take the add shader and I'm going to just drop that in right there. Bring my volume down here for now. What I'm going to do is tag in the glass BSDF. And then I will duplicate, Shift D, my add shader and bring it here. And bring the transparent up. And so now I'm kind of washed out here, but that's just my background lighting. So now I can bring the one studio light here, if you will. And I'm going to pick up the top view here. See, how do I want to do this? Shift D, Shift D, Shift D. Maybe have the light kind of spreading just to the bottom areas here on the outside. Looks pretty good. And just kind of move these things out of the way a little bit so they're not necessarily right on top and not causing bad reflections that I don't want. What I can do is come down to my glass BSDF and the IOR, or the index of refraction. The Blender manual says 0.8 is actually the design for transparent glass, and I know that may get some comments on that one, but it's what it says. I know you get a lot of different results in a lot of different ways, but I'm going to go into the render tab and drop down film and transparent. Go ahead and tag that and tag transparent glass. and make that a little bit better. We don't see any of the background washing out at this point. Now you still got the principal BSDF. You can do a lot with that. One thing I will do is I'm gonna grab the normal and type in bump. This is like my second most favorite thing to do. Now I'll grab the height, type in noise, go for factor. I'm going to come over here and just Shift D duplicate one of these, and then while it's still kind of floating, you can just bring your screen over like that. And I'll plug this in, probably I'll probably do object to vector, and we'll just throw a little bit of noise in here. I like my scale around 10, and then you can give it a little detail, a little bit of a distortion, just to give it a little something in the background. You can go negative or positive, it really doesn't matter. That's pretty cool. Now what I did up here, I did the exact same thing here, only I changed the mapping to bring this side over, because initially when you drop this in, it's overlapped because the coordinates are exactly the same. So if you drop that over, and then you can kind of individually mess with the particular pieces here. Well, that was fun. My power went out, but thank goodness I'm actually on a laptop, so it just flashed my screen a little bit. Okay, so continuing on with the power fluctuating. I like the look so far. Now what I'll do is I will jump back over into the layout, pick up my top view. I'll just duplicate this. I'll Alt D this one and Alt D this one. And cool thing about that is if I come into the texture area here, add a new material, then take this one and delete it. This one should now be controlling these two. So there we go. So now by Alt D, I'm controlling these all the same material here without having to use extra resources, because it kind of takes down the resource use and automatically links them. So it's kind of like almost like an instance, if you will. And if I don't like that, then I can definitely do something else, but that's fine for now. I think we'll just stick with red. Red's fine. Now, yeah, we can see those other spheres through there. I kind of like that. I don't like all the other reflections. I mean, you guys can do this differently. You don't have to have these lights here. I can delete those out so there's not getting a lot of extra crazy reflection, which I don't really like either. Then maybe go to the world properties and bring this to, say, 0.5. .02 seems pretty good. Now switching back over to the shading tab, I went ahead and muted the glass and the transparent, so those pull in a lot of light. It doesn't look too good, but I mean, you still can find a use for that. So just kind of showing you that one, and see, I've got an area light muted here, so kind of have to. So I wouldn't do it this way anymore because of the volume cube and the geometry nodes and the ability to do that. But on the world settings, if you don't do it, if you haven't done it, go to volume and go to volume scatter, and you'll notice everything goes to black, and that's because of the density. The density is up too high, so I would put in 0.1 just to kind of test it out. You get my little foggy area here. This is volume scattering, so the light penetration is only, you see I've got the lights out here too, I forgot about those. So this actual volume is in the entire world, so it can really slow down a scene, but as a very, very nice look to it, I put it to 0.005 and kind of lighten it up. I don't really like that though. I meant to say 0.05, not 0.00. Okay, so that looks pretty good. And then the anisotropy, if you don't know what that is, you're either at 1 or you're at 0. And 1 shoves the light to one side, and 0 shoves the light to the other. That's about all I know about that one. I'm not even going to pretend I know more. I have to look in the Blender manual, but I do know that if you've put this on a glass, you put the volume scatter to a glass object of any type, the anisotropy will throw the light to the front to the back. And so that's pretty much it. Now let's see, G and Z, and I kind of bring that up, and this works really well in a scene where you're going to be using something like street lights. Turn this into a spotlight, which I think is the better look. So this is super cool, and you can change the radius. There we go, spot size. Like I said, guys, I had just got up, and the spot size, you can kind of get a little bit better idea what's going on, and you could turn these up to like ridiculous levels. 10,000 wouldn't hurt. And just for the fun of it, I'm gonna hit 1 GW, which is a gigawatt. You can wash it out with some godlight if you wanted to. Not necessary, but I think 5,000 is more than enough. And then you come back to the world properties and kind of play with the anisotropy, play with the density a little bit. So 0.02 I think is where I used to keep it. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then that spot size is super important on the light in how your overall scene ends up looking. And so there we go. I'm just trying to go through everything I could think of here that pertains to the texture nodes and some extra lighting and things like that. So I could just take that volume scatter and remove that and go back to my normal settings. So I'll reset that. Kind of bring that spot size back up a little bit. And for some reason it does look like I need to be higher, so let's go 10,000 for the fun of it. Alright, so what I do want to do is throw in that cube. If you guys haven't done that before, what I'll do is I'll just take my centerpiece here, create a new node, slash that, pull the geometry nodes over here and type in volume, and we get our wonderful handy dandy volume cube, which is super cool. Could probably make that just a little bit bigger than our scene. And we do have geometry nodes fields, so we can dump this off over here. Should be able to put like the Musgrave texture on that. That's super cool, and you can kind of play with the scale. And you can change this to 4D, the W factor, and type in frame and hit enter and get my scene time. Come back over to the layout and hit play, and now I've got the volume scatter, if you will, working in the volume cube, and then the W on the 4D is animating that. So I don't even need to have it like that, but this gives it a little bit of variation, almost like there might be somebody smoking in the room, right? So that's pretty cool. Alright, well that's about it, guys. I really appreciate you watching. Alright guys, that's about it. I really appreciate you guys watching. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, hit that like button, and I will see you guys in the next tutorial lesson.